It started like any other quiet morning in the small Ohio town of Grove Hill. Retired schoolteacher Martha Whitmore, known in her neighborhood for her kindness and daily walks, simply vanished. No signs of struggle, no goodbye, no clue left behind. Her front door was locked, her phone still on the charger, and her beloved cat left unfed. Family, friends, and neighbors were stunned. How could someone like Martha, who lived such a predictable and peaceful life, just disappear without a trace? Martha had spent over 30 years teaching at the local elementary school, touching countless lives with her gentle spirit. After retiring, she lived a simple, routine life: garden in the morning, coffee with her sister, a short walk around the block. Nothing seemed out of place until that spring day when she was suddenly gone. For months, investigators combed through nearby woods, questioned townsfolk, and followed every tip that came in, but each lead ended in frustration. The town slowly returned to normal, though the sense of unease never fully faded. Then, 8 months later, everything changed. A local hiker stumbled across a rusted vehicle deep in a forest reserve just 20 miles from Martha's home. The vehicle was overgrown with weeds, barely visible through the brush, and covered in fallen leaves. It was Martha's car. Inside, what they found Dora didn't find only deepened the mystery. What could have led a retired teacher with no known enemies or mental health issues to end up in such a remote and hidden place? Why was the car left there for so long without anyone noticing? And most of all, where was Martha? As authorities reopened the case with renewed urgency, the town was left clinging to one burning question: did Martha choose to disappear? Or was someone helping her stay gone? Asterisk, as news broke about the discovery of Martha Whitmore's car, the peaceful community of Grove Hill was shaken once again. Reporters gathered, investigators returned, and neighbors whispered over fences, each with their own theory. The car's location raised even more questions. It was found on an unmarked trail, rarely used even by experienced hikers. The dirt road leading to it was rough, barely wide enough for a vehicle, and had no signs of recent travel. How did Martha's car end up there without being seen for 8 long months? Authorities examined the vehicle carefully. The doors were locked, and the keys were still in the ignition. There were no signs of damage, no broken windows, no blood, nothing inside that pointed to a struggle. Her wallet was still in the glove box, untouched. A faded sweater lay folded on the passenger seat, the same one Martha was believed to be wearing when she disappeared. It was like time had frozen inside the car. But Martha herself was nowhere to be found. Investigators spoke again with Martha's family, trying to retrace her final steps. Her younger sister, Elaine, was the last person to see her. They had coffee that morning, talked about the weather, some old photos, and upcoming garden plans. Nothing unusual, Elaine swore. Martha seemed fine, calm, clear-headed, and content. Friends echoed the same. She had no enemies, no debts, no signs of distress. So why had she driven into the woods? Rumors started to swirl. Some said she might have gone there for peace and got lost. Others believed someone lured her there. But without any solid evidence, everything was just speculation. And as each day passed, one thing became clear. The quiet life Martha had led was hiding something deeper. Something no one saw coming. Asterisk, as detectives reopened the case, they began combing through Martha Whitmore's past with fresh eyes. Her teaching records, medical history, and even old personal letters were reviewed. The more they looked, the more it seemed like Martha lived a life without chaos and no past trauma, no criminal connections, no sudden changes in behavior. But one thing stood out. A few weeks before she vanished, Martha had made several quiet visits to the town library, checking out books on local history, old forest trails, and oddly missing persons cases in rural Ohio. This detail caught investigators off guard. Why would a retired school teacher suddenly take an interest in disappearances? The librarian, a young woman named Jenna, remembered Martha clearly. She asked about abandoned logging roads and remote cabins. Jenna told police. She even wanted copies of old trail maps no one had looked at in years. To most people, it might have seemed like a quirky hobby, but in hindsight, it felt intentional, planned like Martha was searching for something, or maybe someone. Meanwhile, a neighbor named Carlon, elderly man who lived across the street, shared something strange. He claimed he saw Martha arguing with a man in a dark green pickup truck 2 days before she went missing. "I didn't hear much, but it didn't look friendly," he said. At the time, he hadn't thought much of it. But now, the detail added another shadow to the story. As law enforcement dug deeper, another mystery surfaced. Martha had withdrawn nearly $4,000 in cash over the span of 1 month before vanishing. It was unlike her. She rarely used cash, and certainly never in such amounts. No one knew where the money went. Was she preparing to leave? Paying someone? Hiding something? Every clue only opened up more questions. And still, there was no trace of Martha. Weeks passed after the discovery of Martha Whitmore's car, and the investigation kept pulling in more strange pieces. Search teams returned to the forest, this time with tracking dogs and drones, combing every inch of land within a 5-mile radius of the abandoned vehicle. Still, nothing. No footprints, no personal items, no signs that Martha had ever left. The car on foot. It was like she vanished into thin air the moment the engine shut. Detectives began to focus more on the man in the green pickup. Carl's account was the only solid lead, and while it sounded vague at first, he soon remembered one more detail. There was a dent on the truck's rear bumper, deep and rusted, and a faded sticker of a fishing club. That was enough for police to start checking vehicle registrations in the area. What they found made the case twist in a new direction. There was a man named Robert Griggs who matched the vehicle description. He lived just 15 miles outside of Grove Hill and had a quiet reputation. A loner, ex-park ranger. No criminal record, but locals said he kept to himself and hadn't been seen in weeks. When officers visited his remote cabin, it was empty, like someone had left in a hurry. Inside, there were traces of moldy food, an open suitcase, and a drawer full of newspaper clippings about missing people, some dating back over a decade. Among them was an article about Martha's disappearance. But the most chilling discovery was in his garage. Folded maps, just like the ones Martha had asked for. Marked trails. Circled dates. One name scribbled in shaky handwriting. M. Whitmore. Tension gripped the town. Was Robert stalking her? Was he involved, or had he vanished too? Everyone was waiting, breath held, for what would come next. Just as the investigation seemed to narrow in on Robert Griggs, another unexpected turn changed everything. A local hunter, out early on a foggy morning just a few miles from Griggs' cabin, stumbled across something buried beneath loose branches and old tarp behind an abandoned tool shed. It wasn't Martha, but it was disturbing. Inside the tarp were several personal belongings, a pair of women's shoes, a cracked pair of reading glasses, a nearly empty bottle of prescription pills with Martha's name still visible, and an old flip phone, broken but partially intact. It wasn't her current phone, but something older, a backup, something she had kept hidden. Detectives sent the phone in for recovery. When technicians managed to pull a few files, what they found stunned everyone: old text messages and voice memos dating back nearly a year before her disappearance. In one memo, Martha speaks in a low, rushed voice. "I think someone's watching the house. Same truck again today. If anything happens, tell Elaine to look in the garden shed." The message cut off abruptly. No one had ever searched her garden shed, back in Grove Hill, police returned to Martha's quiet home. Behind dusty tools and forgotten flower pots, they found a false floor panel. Underneath it, a small fireproof box with papers inside handwritten. Notes, names, maps, and a journal Martha had kept privately. It revealed a strange and unsettling trail. She had been quietly investigating a string of women who had vanished from small Ohio towns over the last decade, all within a 50-mile radius. She believed someone was targeting the man. She was getting too close. Now, it wasn't just about a missing retired teacher. The evidence suggested something far bigger was unfolding, something Martha may have uncovered before it was too late, and someone may have been watching her every step. The contents of the box changed everything. Detectives now had solid proof that Martha Whitmore had been quietly digging into a series of disappearances long before she vanished. Her journal detailed names, timelines, and hand-drawn maps connecting women who had seemingly vanished without a trace. Women from towns just like Grove Hill. And one name appeared repeatedly in her notes: Robert Griggs. According to her writing, Martha believed he had been involved in the past cases, and that she was close to proving it. Authorities launched a statewide manhunt. Then, 1 week later, Robert Griggs was found alive, camped deep in the Wayne National Forest. When he was brought in, he looked disoriented, thin, and barely spoke. At first, he denied knowing Martha. But when shown the maps and clippings found in his cabin, his face changed. It wasn't fear, it was resignation. Slowly, he began to talk. Griggs admitted to following Martha in the weeks before her disappearance, claiming he thought she was onto something she shouldn't be. He said he had once been close to one of the missing women and believed others were being taken, but didn't have proof. According to him, Martha wasn't a victim. She went into hiding. She'd told him she felt threatened by someone else and didn't trust the police. He said she begged him not to speak of her, even if something happened. But when officers pressed for her location, he broke down. "I don't know where she is now," he whispered. "She never told me her plan." A month later, another letter surfaced. It had been mailed to her sister Elaine, postmarked from a small mountain town in West Virginia. Inside, a short message in Martha's handwriting: "I'm safe. Please stop searching. I had to disappear before someone else did." Martha Whitmore had vanished. Not as a victim, but by choice. Elaine sat quietly on her porch, holding the letter with trembling hands. After 8 long months of questions, heartache, and sleepless nights, she finally had something real: Martha's words, her handwriting, her voice on the page. It wasn't the ending anyone had imagined, but it was enough to give her peace. The letter was turned over to authorities, and though the case remained officially open, they quietly acknowledged the truth. Martha Whitmore had chosen to vanish, to protect herself, and maybe even to protect others. In the weeks that followed, law enforcement began reviewing the cold cases Martha had connected in her journal. While no arrests were made, her work uncovered overlooked patterns that led to the reopening of 3 missing persons files in nearby towns. Investigators credited her notes for bringing renewed attention to cases that had been forgotten. Martha had done what few could. She shined a light in the dark, even if it meant walking away from the life she knew. Robert Griggs was eventually cleared of direct involvement in Martha's disappearance, but remained under scrutiny for his role in earlier missing persons cases. He returned to isolation, leaving behind more questions than answers. As for Grove Hill, the quiet Ohio town that once felt so safe, it would never look at its shadows the same way again. Martha's house stayed empty, her garden overgrown, but her story lingered. It became something more than just a local mystery. It was a reminder of how even the most ordinary lives can hold extraordinary strength. A retired teacher had uncovered a hidden trail of secret sand, though she disappeared. Her voice still echoed in every unanswered question, every reopened file. and every woman whose name she never let be forgotten.